name is Stacy with PeoplePlus, and this is Jonathan, for everyone who hasn't met him yet.
Hello.
And we are up here at the Mossy Ledge Farm, and we're going to do some little short cooking shows. I've been doing PeoplePlus Cooks now for quite a while, so this is kind of a derivative of that, and we figured people are at home, they've got a lot of time right now on their hands during the coronavirus quarantine of 2020, and so let's do some things that maybe we wouldn't normally do. So things that might seem daunting or a little scary to cook, but are really easier than you think. And Jonathan does a lot of those things already, right?
Absolutely.
So a few that we thought of are pasta making, bread making, and cheese making. None of which I had ever done 5 years ago before I met Jonathan. And I still don't really do much of it at all now because Jonathan does it. So I don't need to. But anyway, so today, what are you going to teach us?
We're going to make a quick and simple batch of homemade pasta.
Okay.
And there's an entire world of pasta knowledge, but we don't need to know all that. And if you're going to get into any of this, the best way is to start simple.
Okay, so it's 2 ingredients, right?
2 ingredients.
Flour, which is apparently hard to find at the grocery store these days, actually, unless you go at 7 in the morning. And eggs, flour and eggs.
Yep.
That's it. And how much of each? Like
So
how much egg per flour?
Basic ratio is 1 cup of flour to 2 large eggs. And we'll start with a little less than a cup because it's easy to add flour in, but once you've got it mixed with the eggs, it's awful difficult to take it out.
Right. Okay, great. And this board you've got here is especially your special pasta board, right?
Yeah, so again, not to get down too far into the details, but a lot of people who make pasta regularly have a separate board. If you go to Italy, people who make pasta have their pasta board. They may have beautiful wooden counters and things. Wood is the best surface for it. This is something that's only used for pasta, and as it was explained to me, if you do things like cutting onions and other things on your countertop and stuff like that, where people set their handbags down, you get germs and other things, they have a board that they just use for pasta. You don't need to do that. You can use your kitchen counter. Just make sure it's good and clean and isn't going to pick up any germs or odors or other things off the counter.
Okay, cool. Good advice.
So,
all right, so for you at home, wipe down your counter, because I'm assuming you don't have a piece of plywood as a pasta board. And then you can just use a regular rolling pin, glass bowl, 2 eggs, flour, and a knife for cutting the pasta later. So, all right, have at it. What are you going to do?
we're going to get into it. Okay, so we are going to start, and this is, I know plenty of people who make their homemade pasta and mix it in a bowl, but there's a traditional way to do it, and sometimes it's fun to stick with the traditions, and we do it simply for that reason. So we're going to start out, we're going to pour our full cup of flour out here, we're going to make a little well, as they call it, with the fingers, and then we're going to crack our eggs into there. I find that cracking eggs on a flat surface, actually they break in a more uniform circle, kind of a bizarre thing. It doesn't seem to make sense, but...
Well, when you crack it into the side of a bowl, you shove part of the shell up into the egg, so I think that's
So we're going
part of the reason
to
to do
keep
that.
going.
All right.
So you can see we get 2 eggs sitting in our cup of flour. We're going to break the yolks, and again, you can do this just as well in a bowl. Plenty of people do. And we're just going to kind of get them lightly beaten, and then we're going to start to incorporate little bits of the flour. Again, if you want to do it the first time in a bowl, feel free to do that.
I'm going to get my phone and take more footage.
And eventually, at some point, usually the eggs start spilling out of the volcano. That's not a problem. It just happens. The goal
that's
is
the part
really
that I find scary.
You find that scary? It's
Yes,
daunting.
I
Do you
do.
wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night?
No.
No.
But yeah, it just looks kind of scary.
There you go. See, there's enough flour in there now so that it's got a little.
It's
a little
holding
thickness to it.
together a little.
Yeah. You can just
Did you
kind
use
of
a
see.
scraper on yours? I've seen people use scrapers.
Yep, we do have a dough scraper. I am not using one today because I assume a lot of the people who might be trying this don't have dough scrapers. So.
What about just a spatula?
Yep, you could use a spatula. We can do that. Spatula, anything like that is probably a a good thing to have. In fact, why don't we grab a spatula and work that in. There you go. Spatula. All right. So what we want to do, and again, it's like baking so many other things, we want to get the dough, we want to work the egg and the flour all together here. We're going to just kind of start folding that over and kind of patting it together a little bit as we work the flour in. And again, you know, the goal is to start with maybe a little less flour than you need, because you can always add more. Sometimes it can be, if your eggs are a little on the small side,
you can add another egg if you need to.
Well, if your egg's on the small side, you can't add a 1/16 of an egg very easily to make it a little moister.
Why? You can't, what if you put an egg in another bowl and scrambled it and just added part of that?
I suppose you could do that.
Oh, yeah.
You can kind of see how that's picking up some of the...
Oh, yeah. It's starting to look yellowy. Looks like yellowish egg flour. Okay, so you had mentioned that once you do this, what's next?
So we're going to continue to gently knead this. It's interesting. Like I said, there's a whole body of knowledge. People spend entire lives or careers learning about pasta and so on, different kinds of flours. There are a great many types of pasta that are made without using eggs, just using water. Some of them made with a mixture of water and egg. What we're trying to do is incorporate the flour in here. We're going to get this hopefully smooth. We're gently kneading it. What you're trying to do is build the gluten strands at this point, not rip it apart.
Build the gluten strands.
Yeah, so gluten, again, the internet is a wonderful thing for learning if you look in the right place. We're just gently kneading this. We're going to do it for another minute or two. There's a lot of different ways you can knead it, but we're just kind of gently folding and pushing this. And you can kind of see that the texture is getting pretty smooth with that. So we're pretty close. We're going to get this into a little ball. And then we're going to...
I was like watching you and I didn't move the camera.
We're going to put that in a little ball. Then we're going to get some saran wrap and put it over that and let it sit for about 20 minutes.
Okay, we're back and it's been about 20 minutes. What you can't see off camera is we've got a pot of very salty water coming to a boil, because once this gets rolled out and cut, it goes straight into the water, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It can dry for a little bit. Doesn't really matter. But
okay.
Yeah, there's no benefit to waiting.
All right, let's see it.
All
What's
right.
next?
Okay. So here we've got our little nub of dough, which the texture has actually changed while it's been sitting there.
It's like cookie dough, sort of feels like.
A little bit. And it looks like a tiny amount of dough, right?
It does,
So,
actually.
see
Not look like very
this,
much dough.
Yeah, you'd hardly think that you could feed 2 or even 3 people with that. So because we're using a regular rolling pin, because we're assuming that most of you have something more like this, traditionally what would be used is what's called a mattarello, which is a large rolling pin. This is actually short for a mattarello. It's one I made from old cherry wood on the lathe. I've got to make a new one. Ideally, it should be actually a little bit longer than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll these out, and you want to minimize the amount of flour that you get into it at this point. You only want to add flour as necessary. And
so you just put a little flour on your countertop.
Just a little bit, and you just add in very small amounts.
Well, should I do the other one?
No.
Would you like to have a competition?
I hate competitions with Stacy.
All right, we're boiling over here, so I'm gonna.
Okay, good.
Turn this all the way down.
You're just going to kind of roll this out. You're going to add flour as you need to, only to stop it from sticking. You can typically rotate it a quarter turn. There are some traditional movements for the rolling pin or mattarello, but we're not really gonna worry about those at this point, because the goal is to keep it simple, make something that you can enjoy, and then if you want to get into all the finer points of the technique afterwards, then you can do that.
The other sheet has now been cut,
Rolled out.
rather. And over here, I've got some, probably hard to see, I've got some little pieces of Jonathan's homemade pancetta cut into little niblets, and I'm gonna fry these up in a pan, and then add chopped garlic and fresh chopped tomato. And that's gonna be our sauce, actually, with olive oil. So I'm gonna stir this while you're doing your thing. And the water pot is ready.
So we're just gonna kind of loosely roll this up. We've got enough flour you can kind of, hopefully it's not gonna be too sticky. And then we're just gonna cut these into, just over 1/4 inch wide. Hopefully they will unfold for us when we're ready.
Oh, that's how you do that. I just thought you were gonna slice this in long slices.
Nope.
That's much easier. Can I unroll them?
Yep, I would appreciate it if you would.
Yay, this is the fun part. Do you want the water in a rolling boil?
We want the water on a full rolling boil.
Okay, you can turn the water up too.
Okay, so it works well. Just a tea towel. Kind of a little loose pile like that, that'll keep them from sticking together.
Okay. Zip. I will be responsible for unrolling all of the pasta ribbons.
Water's boiling.
Water's boiling. Let me get this out of your way.
Yep. Kind of. This is
Right.
easy.
So, water's boiling. Just dump in your pasta, sort of in one bowl there. Do you want that spatula?
Yeah, we'll give it a stir. A stir is good. Just need to be with that. So, with most of these pastas, if they're just a single rolled pasta like this, 2 to 3 minutes after it returns to a boil. And if you're making stuffed pastas and things like that, it's somewhat longer because it's thicker, but 2 to 3 minutes. And then we'll dump it in the colander and then
They're done.
Yeah, ideally just go straight in so that it doesn't
Okay,
stick.
you can see here behind me, Jonathan is, he's got the draining of the pasta. We are just finishing up the little crispy bits of pancetta here. I'm going to add chopped garlic. We've cleared out and cleared away the pasta board. So the chopped garlic is going to cook literally in the fat. You can use bacon if you don't have pancetta. Just chopped ham even would be good. If you made like a ham dinner and you've got some of that around, you could do sausage. If you had some sausage at home and you wanted to sort of pan crumble some sausage, you could do turkey, ground anything, ground turkey, ground chicken, ground beef, any of those things, turkey sausage, pork sausage, whatever. Basically just make it your own. We just happen to have pancetta because Jonathan made pancetta. And I'm actually gonna add a little more olive oil so that we have a little more liquid in here, just a bit. And so we're using pancetta, chopped garlic, and we cut up a couple of tomatoes. The vine ripe kind are really good from Hannaford for that. Ooh, that's loud. Kind of get that tossed around. Incorporate all your stuff. This really needs to only cook down for just a couple minutes. Let that kind of come together. So I'm going to add a little thyme. I think thyme has a nice sort of earthy flavor that it brings to things. That's kind of the end of that bottle. and some parsley. So a lot of people might think oregano, and you can definitely use oregano if you want. You could throw in pretty much any herbs you want that you like. An herb that Jonathan likes to use a lot is herb de Provence, which is kind of a blend of herbs.
Yep. Or rosemary. Basil, any of those, or any combination.
Right. All right. I think that looks darn good. What do you think?
So we got some pasta in there.
Yeah, so the best way to do this is you put your pasta straight into your sauce. You toss that around a little bit. Kind of get it incorporated. Did you taste to see how salty it is?
I didn't.
The pancetta is going to be pretty salty, and we did cook that pasta already in a bunch of salt. So one of the things you want to be careful about is not over salting. Taste your food before you salt it, because it's always easy to add some, but it's really hard to take it out. All right, this looks gorgeous. What do you think? Yep, one more toss. Awesome. Turn that off. All right, so
Some tongs.
we need some tongs. We're just going to share a plateful for now. Take some of the tomatoes. Yummy yum. And then if you have it, grate some Parmesan over the top. You might just have a can of Parmesan actually, which is fine. That would work just fine. Sir, your fork. We will share. Come on over here. I think we're a little off camera if we're too far over that way. All right, this looks amazing. So it was a cup of flour and 2 eggs. You watched how it all came together. A little bit of salty meat in a pan with a tomato and some olive oil and garlic, and voila,
There we go.
you have dinner. The pasta has a really nice mouthfeel. It's chewy a little bit. And the crispy pancetta is salty. And the tomatoes, I have to have a tomato. How are those?
Good, not overcooked. Still some texture in the tomatoes, which is nice.
All right, you got the plate?
I got the plate.
So you think you could do this at home? I think you could. Don't you think so?
I expect so.
All right, so that's it on making your own pasta. Choose any sauce you want. Red sauce out of a jar would be just fine. Some pesto, butter and cheese would be good too. But
Butter and sage.
Butter and sage, yeah.
Any of those.
But just try to make it your own and experiment and have fun. It's almost impossible to ruin it. So even if you just roll it out, slice it up, and drop it in water, it might be a dumpling, but it'll still be delicious. So try it yourself at home, and we'll see you next time on back up here at Mossy Ledge Farm.